Sparkle. Hi, boys and girls. It's so good to see you. I think we're on reading lesson number 5. We're doing Cinderella. We're reading Cinderella Around the World books. Today, we're going to do one of my favorites. It's Bigfoot Cinderrrrella. And it's by Tony Johnston and James Warola. And it takes place in a redwood forest. So we're going to read this and we're going to think about all the things that we've been talking about with characters, with their physical traits, their personality traits. We're going to think about their relationships with the other characters in the book. We might even compare a character with another. I think what might be fun is to compare Bigfoot Cinderella with the traditional Cinderella from our first book and see how similar they are. So I'm going to read these. This book has some pretty fun illustrations. So I'm going to try to hold the book up so you can see the illustrations. Okay. Oh, and when we are finished, we're going to make sure that we fill out our Cinderella story recipe chart. I need my glasses. Bigfoot Cinderella. This is going to be a fun one. I can tell already. Once upon a time, in the old growth forest, a band of Bigfoots lived. An enormous snag towered over the other trees close to their camp. Inside its hollow halls of bark lived a dashing Bigfoot prince. He was tall and dark as a Douglas fir with feet like cedar stumps. He was as odoriferous as his tree home was coniferous, and so horrendously hairy that Bigfoot women near and far longed to marry him. I see why. He is a very handsome Bigfoot. Whenever they saw him lurching along, they blocked his path like deadfalls. They draped wildflowers around themselves. They batted their matted eyelashes to stun him into love. But the prince loved nature best. "No pick flowers," he bellowed at them in a voice as rough as bark. You see the lady Bigfoots? Oh, they have little flowers. In this place, there lived a Bigfoot woman and her 3 daughters. Well, really, only 2 were hers. The third was a stepdaughter. The daughters were puny things with dinky feet, almost furless as Bigfoots go, and as sour as little green berries. They spent their days bathing and picking their teeth with fish bones and sleeking their fur with pine cones. For fun, they threw rocks at spotted owls. The stepdaughter was just the opposite, nearly as woolly as a mammoth, golden as a banana slug with feet like log canoes. She loved nature and would harm no creature. So these are the sisters, small with tiny feet. For fun, they threw the rocks at the owl. What kind of personality trait does that give us a clue about, huh? They were ornery. Oh, and here's their stepsister. She has huge feet, pretty big, and she loves nature and wouldn't hurt anything. And I think this is the stepmother. Her stepsisters despised her, and they made her work. Although her name was Ella, they roared at her so much that everyone called her Rella. Rella, fix fire. Rella, catch fish. They forced her to comb her fur and stick wildflowers in it. If she tugged them out, they put back twice as many. In spite of this primping, Rella was sooty from the fire and stinking with fish. So they teased her like stinging mosquitoes. "You beast," they laughed and held their noses. "You positive reek! You absolute freak!" Then they bathed her a lot in the creek. Eek! You see Rella carrying the logs, and they're laying around, being nasty and mean to her. One morning, Rella went to the river to get supper. She fished all day and tossed her catch onto the bank in a silvery pile. Suddenly, a grizzly bear appeared. He seemed hungry. Rella was bigger than the bear, so she could have shooed him away, but she was too kind. She let him have the fish. When she shambled home empty-handed, her stepsisters rubbed their bellies and bellowed, "Food, food, food." They forced her to fish all night. Now, every year, the Bigfoot Prince gave a great fun fest. There were gifts and food and games like Jump the Fire, Bear Cave Hide and Seek, and Hurl the Hemlock. But log rolling was the favorite. This year, whichever woman rolled the prince off a log and into the river would become his wife. Rella's puny sisters hoped to dunk the prince. "When me snag putrid furball prince, me rule whole tree place," yelled the older one. "Me pick all flower," the younger one grinned. Then they bellowed together, "Power, power, power." So they smoothed their pitiful fur, then spruced up with wildflowers and wearing fine bark clogs to grip the log. They clomped to the festival. "Me go too," Rella hollered after them. She adored to sweat and win at games. Her sisters hooted so hard they fell down. "You stay! Catch plenty fish. We catch prince." So they're going to the festival, and she needs to stay home. Sounds familiar, right? How Rella longed to go. Sadly, she stared at the river. She saw a fish jump. She made a wish on the fish. "Me wish go fun fest. Me wish dunk prince." "Heartfelt wish is true wish," growled a gruff voice. "And so you go." Oh, look carefully. I see somebody back there. Rella spun around. She was staring at a bear, the very one she had given fish. "Who are you?" she asked. "Me, your berry godfather." Rella was overjoyed, then underjoyed. She mumbled, "Me got no bark clogs to keep on log. Feet's too big." "No Be bug brain, snorted her godfather. He swiped the air with a paw, and instantly an enormous pair of clogs appeared. Rella tried them on. They fit perfectly. Then the grizzly waved a paw over her, and poof! The wildflowers she wore were dust. He patted and matted her fur, and it tangled like the very forest floor. Oh, she didn't want to look all clean and neat. She didn't like the wildflowers. And she wanted to look tangled and be stinky. That's a little bit different than the other Cinderella characters we've read about. She boomed, "Thanks," and gave him a crunching hug. "Be back by sundown," he warned, "or you be like sisters make you. No furry and smelly, but plenty flowery." Rella wasn't worried. She had lots of time. She skipped off, shaking the whole forest as she went. At the fun fest, there were Bigfoot women from every clan. The games had begun. One by one, the women leaped onto a log where the prince crouched readily. One by one, he dumped them into the water. Do you see the prince here? Oh, he just dumped somebody. Rella's stepsisters hated games, but to catch the prince, they'd do anything, even give logs a twirl. And they hoped a good drenching might even wash off some of his stench. But they never got the chance. When their turn came, the prince saw their wildflower chains and glowered. He tossed them in the water, snarling, "No pick flowers!" The day grew late. Everyone had tried to win. Everyone had failed. The Bigfoot prince rumbled, "Rats, no bride." He was about to slouch home when thunk! Rella bounded onto the log, pounding her chest and whooping, "Me dunk, prince!" Grunting with all her might, she spun the log like a big twig. Then she gave it a twist and flop. The prince flopped into the river. There was a stunned silence. The Bigfoots were slow-witted, so it took them a while to figure out what happened. When at last they began to chant, "Bride, bride, 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 bride." The sun was setting. Rella saw that and rushed into the dense trees, shrieking, "Eek!" just as her matted fur went sleek and wildflowers began to sprout. The prince lurched from the water, dripping and crushed, his dream woman shaggy as the forest floor, smelling as a fish and strong, was gone. Scratching his craggy head, he slumped down on a boulder. "Drat, drat, drat!" He gnashed his mossy teeth. "Where my stinking beauty go?" Then he saw one big bark clog, hers. Now perhaps he could find his princess. The prince shuffled from snag to snag, cave to cave, lugging the lost clog. But though all the Bigfoot women tried it on, it was too large for anyone. The moment he reached Rella's cave, her stepmother and stepsisters pounced on the prince, wrestled the clog from him, and jumped into it eagerly. Their feet were so small, they all fit at once. Then Rella bounded up, yelling, "Me try, me try, me, me, me." She did, and her foot fit the clog like a seed in a pod. When she pulled pulled out its mate, the Bigfoot prince knew he'd found his bride. He thumped his chest and roared with joy. The stepsisters roared too. In tantrums, they yanked up some wildflowers and saplings, and their mother kicked the prince black and blue. Ooh. Oh. Temper tantrums. Soon there was a rowdy wedding in the old-growth forest. Everyone was invited. Even Rella's stepmother and stepsisters could come if they followed these rules carefully. No pick flower. No pull tree. No kick royal family. Oh, look. Okay, so let's get our Cinderella story recipe. Uh-oh, Gus, you gotta move over. There we go. Can you see it? Gus, you can stay there. And let's see. I already wrote Bigfoot Cinderella, the title. Cinderella is kind. Would you say Bigfoot Cinderella was kind? Well, she's definitely kind to the nature beings in the forest. Let's say yes. Siblings, her siblings, were they mean? What do you think? I agree with you. Something is lost? It was her clog. Yeah, not a little dainty slipper, right? But a clog. And Cinderella goes from poor to rich? I don't know. Let's look for some evidence. So the prince lives in a big snag tree at the beginning. So I guess for Bigfoot people, that's like a castle? They did have a big wedding at the end. It doesn't really say that Cinderella was poor. She caught a lot of fish. She definitely had enough to eat, but she did have to work hard. What do you think? I think I go with Fiona's idea. Fiona doesn't really think that Cinderella went necessarily from poor to rich. Thanks, Fiona, for sharing that. So I'm not going to give that a check mark. Okay. Now, let's compare Bigfoot Cinderella with the classic Cinderella of the first book that we read. Let's compare the characters in the different books. I made a poster, and before I read Bigfoot Cinderella, I came up with some ideas about the traditional Cinderella. I felt like she was pretty. They said she was pretty and kind of girly. She liked girl things. She wanted to dress in pretty dresses and ribbons in her hair. I feel like she wasn't very good at standing up for herself. She let her stepsisters and her stepmother push her around. She's definitely a hard worker, and she wanted more for herself. One thing I'd like to add that I don't have room is her feet were very tiny. Remember her slipper was tiny? Yeah. So let's think of some characteristics of Bigfoot Cinderella. Would you say she is pretty and girly? No. Bigfoot Cinderella was definitely strong and stinky. I think she's kind of like a tomboy Bigfoot. Would you say that Bigfoot Cinderella is good at standing up for herself? Nah, I don't think she was very good at standing up for herself. All these Cinderella characters get pushed around by bullies. Did you notice that? I'm going to use the word timid. Because she's not good at standing up for herself. Did the Bigfoot Cinderella, was she a hard worker? Yeah, I agree with you. And the Bigfoot Cinderella, does she want more for herself? And what I mean by that is the traditional Cinderella was kind of like a servant girl, and she did all the chores and worked hard and took care of the house and the stepsisters and the stepmother, but she really longed to have a much better life. Would you say the same for Bigfoot Cinderella? She did want to go to the fun fest. She was pretty sad on this page about that. She really wanted to push the prince in the river. She wanted to go and participate in that. I think you're right. She did want more for herself. So the two characters are actually very similar. They're both timid, they both work hard, and they want more for themselves. But their differences are mostly in their appearances, where the traditional Cinderella was pretty and girly and liked dresses, and Bigfoot Cinderella was more very strong and a tomboy and didn't want to have wildflowers in her fur. So what I'd like you to do as a challenge in your own reading is I'd like you to think about the character that you're reading about and think about a character maybe that you read about earlier in a different book and compare the two. Are there any characters that you are reading about now that are similar to a character from another book that you had read earlier? So try that. Try comparing characters across books. Okay. Make sure you do your reading every day. This is how we become better readers, and we become better at thinking about our reading and understanding the stories that we read. Right? Okay, until next time. Oh, wait, I have some friends that want to say bye. Bye, bye. Oh, wait, Gus wants to say bye. Bye, bye. Oh, Gus, you're not as shy.